Yo, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy Bill Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC. Um, just a little quick note for you guys. I took the week off because I was basically exhausted through all the work I was doing. You know what I mean? So I just needed to take a week off just to, recharge my battery and stuff like that. But I'm back. Hope you guys been having a good Saturday afternoon slash evening time. Hope you guys have been staying safe out there. But don't worry, this upcoming week, I'll be loaded with content. And yes, I will have my show, Basketball Conversations, back for you guys this upcoming Friday, okay? So don't worry, it'll be coming to you very, very soon. So stay tuned for that. But I wanted to talk about, some boxing in this itty bitty case here. Um, there have been a lot of talks about upcoming fight between Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson. Um, both these guys, two first ballot Hall of Fame boxers. All right, both of them have had great legacies in the ring, but the problem is that both these guys, they're way past their peaks. Roy Jones is what 51 years old. Mike Tyson's what 54, and so both these guys are obviously way past their peaks. Past their expiration date. In fact, there was rumors at the time when Roy Jones Jr. defeated John Ruiz for the WBA belt that there were some rumors about him possibly staying at heavyweight to face against Mike Tyson after Tyson, had his fight with Lennox Lewis. Unfortunately, that never happened, and then obviously Roy Jones Jr. dropped back down to light heavyweight, and that's where his career went downhill after getting torn apart by Antonio Tarver, which kind of started the downfall of Roy Jones. Well, obviously, you guys know that Mike Tyson's downfall began when he lost to James Buster Douglas. So, but here's my 2 cents on the whole thing. I don't like the fight. I don't approve it because both these guys are way past their prime. Both of these guys haven't even fought in almost. Actually, Mike Tyson hasn't even fought since 2005 when he basically quit against Kevin McBride. And for Roy Jones Jr. in this case, I think he just retired. I think he retired. I think he retired back in his last fight was back in 2018. So it's been barely 2 years. Roy Jones fought way too long in the sport, and clearly I can tell that his speech is kind of slurred, and he's not the same boxer that he once was before. He fought way too long in the sport. I mean, after he got knocked out by Antonio Tarver, he got knocked out by Glenn Johnson. He got knocked out by you know Danny Green. You know Denis Lebedar, a Russian fighter, and he got knocked out by guys that had no chance against him, even at his peak. So it's like I don't know why Roy Jones would want to risk, it hurting himself in the ring again. You know, and Mike Tyson, he hasn't even fought since 2005. Now, I would say that Tyson would have a little bit of a slight advantage since of the fact that he hasn't fought in a decade, and maybe he hasn't even hurt himself a lot. But I guarantee you that after 3 rounds, Tyson is going to be losing his breath because he haven't even done any close to boxing in almost in a decade. And so I don't like the fight, but here's why I'd say that it. I don't. Here's my 2 cents on this. I don't like the fight, but I can't blame two guys that wanted to get in the ring and do it because right now in this current pattern of boxing, even during the pandemic, the best fighters are not fighting against each other because they're more worried about making the biggest purse and keeping their so-called brand together instead of challenging themselves to be great. The only heavyweight fighter that's been doing that has been Deontay Wilder. Okay, and Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder are not going to fight either in December or probably in next February, depending on how the pandemic shapes out. And so right now, boxing is falling way behind in terms of the UFC right now because the UFC are still going on. They're still hosting shows and putting on good fights right now, despite the fact that how people don't like Dana White. And personally, I don't like Dana White either because he's a shady promoter. But you got to give Dana White credit. He's been putting on excellent fights, and people have been coming in to watch the fights. And right now, boxing is falling way behind in the whole grand scheme of things because there's way too many politics, there's way too many screw jobs behind the scenes going on that is delaying great fights from happening. I mean, the one fight that we should have had this year, if the pandemic never happened, we should have had Terrence Crawford versus Earl Spence Jr. But unfortunately, the same kind of politics and the same kind of BS has been delaying the fight for the longest time. And right now, it's like, you know, one of the reasons why I don't talk about boxing as much is because the boxers right now, they're not pushing themselves to be great. They're letting the politics, they're letting their financial influence dictate how they move around these streets. They're not daring themselves to be great. It's not like it was back in the 50s and the 60s, or even you can go back even towards the early 2000s. When a lot of these great fighters challenge themselves to be great in the ring. And at the end of the day, guys, I don't like the fight between two old men, but unfortunately, it's the one thing that's keeping boxing afloat, and that's embarrassing for a lot of the younger fighters because, listen, if you don't want to see two old fighters get in the ring, if you feel like you should be the guy that should be having in the spotlight, dare yourself to be great. Get in the ring and fight against fighters that are going to test your greatness. What are you scared of losing your undefeated streak for? You scared that if you lose your undefeated streak, your career is over? Great fighters have bounced back even from their most devastating losses. Okay? Remember, Sugar Ray Leonard didn't have his best fight against Roberto Duran. He didn't fight particularly well. He fought the wrong fight. But what did he do? He got back up, rematched it with Duran again, and basically outclassed it and made him quit. That's what you do. All right? For Evander Holyfield, he was being questioned about why he was being as a heavyweight. But then he stepped up. He fought against the most dangerous heavyweight in Riddick Bowe and had one of the greatest heavyweight trilogies of the 90s. He even came back after he lost to Riddick Bowe the first time. He came back and beat Riddick Bowe to regain the heavyweight titles. All right? Just because you use your O does not mean that your career is over. And a lot of these young fighters, they don't understand that the undefeated record can be a tad bit overrated if you are not fighting against the fighters that is going to challenge your greatness. All right, and the fact that both these guys, way past their prime, is still in the limelight in boxing. If I were a boxer right now, if I were a well-known boxer that is at the top of the sport, I'd be insulted by this. All right, I'd be very, very insulted that two old fighters, even though they're first ballot Hall of Famers, okay, two old fighters way past their prime are getting in the ring and going to legit fight each other. That should be an insult that you should not take. All right. So obviously, for me, I might watch some highlights of it. But if you ask me, would I watch the entire fight? Maybe for the grand spectacle. But the way it looks, both these guys are going to get really, really tired in the mid rounds. Both. I mean, for Roy, he hasn't fought since 2018, so maybe he would have the advantage in terms of that. But you have to understand that Mike Tyson, even after the fact that he doesn't even have, you know, the boxing reflexes and skills because he hasn't fought in the ring since 2005, he still has the power. I mean, he still was able to, lift weights and keep himself in shape, you know. And I think that, both these guys, they're going to put on a grand spectacle. And I think that if they can stack up a good undercard for that, I think it would be a very interesting attraction, you know, because right now boxing fans need an attraction right now because MMA is basically stomping them at the neck and they're putting boxing in a very bad position. So that's just my 2 cents on the whole thing, though, guys. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section.